What does the Bible say about the role of women? Can they also be clergy or priests, or is this strictly a role for men?
Mhm. Yeah, I think you're trying to trap me in all kinds of challenging questions here, but I haven't shied away from it because these are the kinds of questions people ask every day. And if we're not willing to address them, then it's called ostrich theology, where when the ostrich is afraid, it just buries its head in the sand, hoping that the trouble will go away. Or a child, that closes their eyes at night because the boogeyman can't see them in the dark, things like that. So no, we've got to wrestle with these things, and I think the starting point is this: you go back to 1950, and nobody was talking about ordaining women. Nobody, not certainly not in the Adventist Church. Today, it's a hot discussion topic. So what changed? What is it that changed? All right, go back to 1950. Uh, Nobody was talking about ordaining women. Why? Number one, the Bible didn't require it. That's absolutely clear. The Bible nowhere says you should ordain women. All right. Number two, society supports us. Back then, women were not police, women were not army, women were not airline pilots, etc. So many professions did not have women in them. So society was basically saying there are certain professions that we don't expect women to be in. Third, we never did it that way before. In other words, inertia was on the side of not ordaining women, and nobody challenged it because the Bible didn't require it, and society supported that perspective. In the last 50 years, society has completely changed. Women today fly planes. Women today go into the Army, into Special Forces, Navy. Uh, you name the profession, except for ministry, and women are entirely available in ministry. All right. So, do we follow society? Is that our guideline? No, absolutely not. But here's the dynamic that happened. Okay, when society shifted, the idea that we never did it that way before is of no value, because if you're wrong, you're wrong. Okay, so we never did it that way before is not an argument. It's simply a way of existing. When society changed on the subject of women and only ministry became a place where women were excluded, the question was, why should it be that way? Is that really what the Bible is teaching? And so then, because of society's shift, people went back to the Bible and studied it again. Okay? And they discovered something interesting. The Bible doesn't forbid it either. There are texts people quote, but if you ask the exegetical question, there's no statement in the Bible that says women should not be ordained, simply because no one asked that question. The Bible doesn't answer the question because it wasn't asked. So when that became the issue in 2015, the Adventist Church decided not to ordain women. But they did not do so on a biblical basis. If you go back to the action in 2015, it says, since the Bible neither requires nor forbids women to be ordained, should we allow freedom to various divisions of the church to make that decision on their own? That was the question at issue. What was agreed was that this is not a biblical issue. So, if it's not a biblical issue, then the issue of what works in society is important. In other words, if you're living in a society where ordaining women would be tantamount to a crime, don't do it. It's not an issue to die on. On the other hand, if you're in society where not ordaining women is a scandal, then it might be wise to just do so, especially if there's evidence that there are women who are actually called to ministry. And I've, as a teacher, run into many of those. So I think the wise position of the church would be that we allow the evidence of the society, the evidence of what works and what doesn't work in society, to guide us as to where it might be useful. And of course, the challenge is in a, let's say, a conference or a union where ordaining women would be a really positive thing, there will be some local churches where it would not be a positive thing, right? So, I mean, you have that problem. And there are places where, let's say, no ordaining of women, and there's churches there that are chafing at that. So I think an understanding that this is not a biblical issue, God has not chosen to foreclose it. After all, when God called Ellen G. White, he gave her a position higher than an ordained minister. So the idea that women are somehow inherently unworthy of ministry doesn't hold water in the Adventist church. It may in other churches, but not in the Adventist church. A woman held a higher position of authority than any ordained minister. And by the way, Ellen White did have ordained minister credentials. You can go to any Ellen G. White estate and ask for her ministerial certificate, and she is treated as an ordained minister by the Adventist church. And there's history behind that. Don't want to get into that. Probably not competent to get into that, but I have seen those certificates. So she was treated as at least an ordained minister in terms of her authority. I don't know if that's helpful,
That's
but a lot of these issues force us to think and challenge our preconceived assumptions. And the ostrich theology is a comfortable one and is probably where many people need to be. There are various stages of faith where certainty is more important than at other stages. But as we mature, as human beings mature, they realize that the life they had as a child may have been certain, may have been simple, but it was limited. It wasn't really the way things are. When you become adult, you realize, whoa, this is complicated. I had no idea when I was a child. So I think the church needs to be kind to those who need certainty, but it also needs to find a place for those for whom the certainty no longer works. And that's an area I wrestle with every day.
a fascinating perspective, Dr. Paulien. Thank you.